Imagine for a second, your own child, the one you loved and raised, trying to steal everything you ever worked for. My name is Eleanor, and that's precisely what happened to me, right there in the bank. You won't believe the lengths some people will go to, especially when greed takes over their soul. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about what happens when an old woman decides enough is finally enough. Listen to my story until the end and tell me, what would you have done in my place? It was a Tuesday morning, bright and sunny, but inside that First National Bank, a storm was brewing. I was sitting across from my daughter, Sarah Vance, the flesh and blood I brought into this world, and she was pushing papers at me. They weren't just any papers. They were legal documents, carefully drafted, designed to strip me of every single penny, every memory, every brick of my home. My own daughter, trying to take it all. She thought I was old, frail, maybe a little confused, easy pickings. Oh, she had it all planned out, whispering about, managing my affairs, while her eyes gleamed with a hunger I'd never seen. But I wasn't as lost as she wanted. My mind, despite my age, was sharper than she gave it credit for. As she droned on, my hand, shaking slightly, slipped a small, folded note to the kind bank teller, Mark, who was trying to process her outrageous demands. Mark, a young man with a good heart, unfolded that note, his eyes scanning my desperate plea. He read my words, words of coercion and distress, and his face changed. He stopped the transaction immediately. The air in the bank, thick with Sarah's false concern, suddenly crackled with tension. Sarah's face twisted into fury, her plan exposed, her greed laid bare. The authorities were discreetly called, her attempt thwarted, but the damage to my soul was done. My name is Eleanor Vance, and I'm 72. My life was defined by quiet diligence, unwavering devotion. I grew up modestly, valuing honesty, hard work, and family loyalty. I was a skilled bookkeeper in my younger days, meticulous with details, shrewd with finances, though I never flaunted it. Building a secure life for my late husband and me, raising Sarah, my only daughter, with boundless love and trust. That was my pride. My home, my savings, a legacy, all meant for her. That deep trust was now brutally torn down. Mark's quick thinking prevented immediate financial ruin, but the betrayal itself left me devastated. The emotional fallout was catastrophic, my trust in my only child shattered. The profound shame of being manipulated by my own flesh and blood, coupled with a crushing isolation, weighed heavily. Sarah, furious her plan was thwarted, immediately launched a vicious smear campaign. She portrayed me as senile and erratic to family, friends, and the community, further isolating me in my profound grief and anger. I found myself adrift, grappling with overwhelming anger, a burning desire for justice, not just for myself but for the principle of what was right, for all the vulnerable elderly. The humiliating realization that my daughter viewed me as a mere obstacle to her wealth, not a loving mother, fueled a cold, determined resolve. This wasn't just about my money, it was about reclaiming my dignity, teaching Sarah a lesson she'd never forget. The game, as they say, had just begun. In today's story, you will discover how I, an ordinary grandmother, outsmarted my own daughter when she tried to steal everything I had. This isn't just about money, it's about betrayal and the quiet strength of an old woman pushed too far. Imagine for a second your own child, the one you loved and raised, trying to steal everything you ever worked for. My name is Eleanor, and that's precisely what happened to me, right there in the bank. You won't believe the lengths some people will go to, especially when greed takes over their soul. This isn't just a story about betrayal, it's about what happens when an old woman decides enough is finally enough. Listen to my story until the end and tell me, what would you have done in my place? It was a Tuesday morning, bright and sunny, but inside that First National Bank, a storm was brewing. I was sitting across from my daughter, Sarah Vance, the flesh and blood I brought into this world, and she was pushing papers at me. They weren't just any papers, they were legal documents, carefully drafted, designed to strip me of every single penny, every memory, every brick of my home. My own daughter, trying to take it all. She thought I was old, frail, maybe a little confused, easy pickings. Oh, she had it all planned out, whispering about, managing my affairs, while her eyes gleamed with a hunger I'd never seen. But I wasn't as lost as she wanted. My mind, despite my age, was sharper than she gave it credit for. As she droned on, my hand, shaking slightly, slipped a small, folded note to the kind bank teller, Mark, who was trying to process her outrageous demands. Mark, a young man with a good heart, unfolded that note, his eyes scanning my desperate plea. He read my words of coercion and distress, and his face changed. He stopped the transaction immediately. The air in the bank, thick with Sarah's false concern, suddenly crackled with tension. Sarah's face twisted into fury, her plan exposed, her greed laid bare. The authorities were discreetly called, her attempt thwarted, but the damage to my soul was done. My name is Eleanor Vance, and I'm 72. My life was defined by quiet diligence, unwavering devotion. I grew up modestly, valuing honesty, hard work, and family loyalty. I was a skilled bookkeeper in my younger days, meticulous with details, shrewd with finances, though I never flaunted it, building a secure life for my late husband and me, raising Sarah, my only daughter, with boundless love and trust. That was my pride. My home, my savings, a legacy, all meant for her. That deep trust was now brutally torn down. Mark's quick thinking prevented immediate financial ruin, but the betrayal itself left me devastated. The emotional fallout was catastrophic. My trust in my only child shattered. The profound shame of being manipulated by my own flesh and blood, coupled with a crushing isolation, weighed heavily. Sarah, furious her plan was thwarted, immediately launched a vicious smear campaign. She portrayed me as senile and erratic to family, friends, and the community, further isolating me in my profound grief and anger. I found myself adrift, grappling with overwhelming anger, a burning desire for justice. Not just for myself, but for the principle of what was right, for all the vulnerable elderly. The humiliating realization that my daughter viewed me as a mere obstacle to her wealth, not a loving mother, fueled a cold, determined resolve. This wasn't just about my money. It was about reclaiming my dignity, teaching Sarah a lesson she'd never forget. The game, as they say, had just begun. What Sarah didn't know was that her mother's senility was a carefully constructed illusion. My mind, though older, was still razor-sharp, a tool honed by years of meticulous bookkeeping and a lifetime of observing people. This wasn't just my secret weapon, it was my foundation. And then there was Mark, the bank teller. His kindness wasn't just a fleeting gesture, it was the first crack in Sarah's carefully built fortress of lies, an unexpected ally in this fight. Over the years, while Sarah thought I was just doting, I was also quietly observing. I had kept impeccable, detailed records not just of my own finances, but also, subtly, of Sarah's past financial struggles, her questionable dealings, and manipulative tendencies. Call it a mother's intuition, or a bookkeeper's habit, but this dossier of information was more valuable than any bank account. Mark, the young man from the bank, was more than just a hero that day. He was a crucial, unexpected ally. Moved by my plight, he offered guidance, connecting me to resources I wouldn't otherwise access. He saw beyond the surface, recognizing the injustice, and offering a helping hand when I felt completely alone. My sorrow was deep, but it was slowly transforming into a quiet strength. The initial shock had given way to a steely resolve. I realized that my perceived vulnerability was actually my greatest advantage. Sarah saw an old woman, easy to dismiss, but I was becoming something else entirely. A strategist, planning my next move with the precision of a chess master. Listen to this story until the end and tell me, what would you have done in my place? I'm Eleanor Vance, 72 years old, and not long ago, I found myself in a situation no mother ever imagines. It was a Tuesday morning, bright and unsuspecting, when my own daughter, Sarah, sat across from me in the First National Bank. She wasn't there for a friendly visit. She was pushing legal documents, meticulously crafted, aiming to strip me of every single penny, every memory, and every brick of my home. My own child, trying to take everything I ever worked for. She looked at me, her eyes glinting with a hunger I'd never truly seen before, whispering about managing my affairs, as if I were already gone. She thought I was old, frail, maybe a little confused, an easy target. But my mind, despite my age, was sharper than she gave it credit for. As her voice droned on, my hand, shaking just slightly, slipped a small, folded note to Mark, the kind bank teller, who was trying to process her outrageous demands. That note was my silent cry for help. Mark unfolded that note, his face changing as he read my desperate plea, detailing the coercion. He stopped the transaction immediately. The air in the bank, thick with Sarah's false concern, suddenly crackled with tension. Sarah's face twisted into pure fury, her carefully constructed plan exposed, her raw greed laid bare. The authorities were discreetly called, her attempt thwarted, but the profound damage to my soul, to our relationship, was already done. That moment changed everything for me, setting me on a path from which there was no turning back. Before all that ugliness, my life was, well, it was just non-stab life. I grew up in a small house, nothing fancy, but it was filled with love and a strong sense of right and wrong. My parents always taught me that honesty and hard work were the only things you could truly count on, and that family was everything. Those values really stuck with me, shaping every decision I ever made. I started out as a bookkeeper, fresh out of school, and I loved it. Numbers just made sense to me. I was always the one who caught the little mistakes, the one who made sure every penny was accounted for. It wasn't glamorous work, but I took pride in being meticulous, in knowing the details. That careful nature, that eye for the small things, became a part of who I was, a silent strength. Then I met my husband, Frank. He was a good man, steady and kind. We didn't have much to start, but we had big dreams. We built our home together, brick by brick, memory by memory. Every nail we hammered, every coat of paint we applied, it was all part of our shared future. We saved, we planned, we made sacrifices, always looking ahead to a comfortable, secure life. When Sarah came along, it was like the sun had risen just for us. She was my world, my only child. I poured all my love into raising her, teaching her those same values my parents taught me. I wanted her to have a better life than I did, to have every opportunity. Her happiness was my happiness, her future, my own hopes realized. I remember working extra hours, sometimes taking on freelance bookkeeping jobs from home, just to afford that special dress she wanted for a school dance, or a new set of art supplies. It wasn't a burden, it was a joy. Every sacrifice felt like an investment in her, in our family's future, a testament to the boundless love a mother has for her child. Our home, the one she tried to take, isn't just a house. It's where Frank and I raised Sarah, where we celebrated holidays, where we weathered storms. Every room holds a piece of our story, a lifetime of cherished memories. It's the place where I felt safe, where I felt loved, and where I believed our family's legacy would continue, passed down through generations. My savings, too, weren't just numbers in a bank account. They were years of careful planning, of choosing needs over wants, of making sure there was always a safety net. It was the security I built for myself and for Frank, and ultimately, it was meant to be Sarah's inheritance, a foundation for her own future, a gift of love from her mother. I always tried to be a good neighbor, a loyal friend. I volunteered at the local library, helped out with community events. People knew me as Eleanor, the one you could trust, the one who always kept her word. I valued those connections, those bonds of community. My reputation, built on decades of integrity, was something I held dear, part of my identity. After Frank passed, the house felt a little emptier, but my purpose remained clear. I continued to manage our affairs, to keep everything in order, all with Sarah in mind. She was my comfort, my reason for going on. I believed with all my heart that she would be there for me, just as I had always been there for her. I thought our bond was unbreakable, that our trust ran deeper than anything. I imagined growing old, surrounded by her love and care, knowing everything I had built would one day be hers, a continuation of our family story. That deep, unwavering trust, that belief in her, was the very foundation of my world before she shattered it. The bank incident might have stopped Sarah from taking my money right then, but it opened up a much deeper wound. It wasn't just about the cash or the house anymore. It was about the shattering of a bond I thought was unbreakable. How could my own daughter look at me with such cold, calculating eyes? That moment, when her greed was laid bare, took something precious from me, something money could never replace. It was the start of a pain that settled deep in my bones. The emotional fallout was catastrophic, a total breakdown of everything I believed in. My trust, not just in Sarah, but in the idea of family itself, crumbled into dust. It was like a part of my heart had been ripped out, leaving a gaping, aching hole. Every memory of raising her, every sacrifice I made, felt twisted and tainted by her betrayal. I felt hollowed out, empty, like a ghost in my own life. Then came the shame, a heavy blanket that smothered me. Even though Mark had saved me, the idea that my daughter had tried to manipulate me, that I had been so vulnerable, was humiliating. I pictured people whispering, wondering if I was truly all there. The personal violation was profound. It made me feel small and exposed, like my deepest fears had been confirmed for the whole world to see. The isolation started subtly at first. Friends who used to call daily suddenly became busy. Invitations to neighborhood gatherings stopped arriving. It was like a slow, creeping chill, telling me that things weren't just back to normal after that day at the bank. I could feel the distance growing, hear the silence where familiar voices used to be. It was a new, frightening kind of loneliness. Sarah, fueled by her thwarted plan, didn't waste any time. She immediately launched a vicious smear campaign, spreading lies like wildfire through our quiet town. She twisted the story, making herself out to be the victim, the concerned daughter trying to look after her confused old mother. She was good at it too. She always had a way with words, charming people into believing her version of events. She painted me as senile, erratic, incapable of managing my own life. Poor Eleanor, I imagined them saying, "She's lost her marbles." She told people I was paranoid, imagining things, forgetting important details. It was a cruel, calculated move, designed to discredit me completely, to make sure no one would ever believe a word I said if I tried to tell the truth. It was a brutal attack on my reputation. My relationships, built over decades, started to fracture under the pressure. Some friends, the ones who didn't know me well enough, believed Sarah's tearful tales. Others, perhaps uncomfortable with the drama, simply distanced themselves. The phone rang less and less. It was a stark reminder that even the strongest bonds could fray and snap when faced with such malicious gossip and betrayal from someone so close. There was one particularly stinging moment. I went to the grocery store, a place I'd visited weekly for years, and saw Mrs. Henderson, a woman I'd known since Sarah was a baby. She usually greeted me with a warm smile, but that day, she just nodded quickly, her eyes darting away. It was a small gesture, but it felt like a punch to the gut, confirming that Sarah's poison was working. I started to question myself. Was I really losing my edge? Had I been too trusting, too naive? The constant accusations from Sarah, echoed in the strained silences of my friends, made me doubt my own judgment. I felt like a failure, not just as a mother, but as a person who had always prided herself on being sensible and in control. It was a crushing feeling. Even though Mark had saved my immediate assets, the financial threat still loomed large. Sarah's attempt had shown me how easily everything I'd worked for could be stolen. I lived with a constant knot of anxiety in my stomach, afraid she'd try again, perhaps more cleverly next time. The security I had carefully built felt fragile, constantly at risk, like a house of cards. To make matters worse, Sarah seemed to be thriving, at least on the surface. She played the role of the devoted, worried daughter perfectly to those outside our immediate circle, gaining sympathy and support. Her social media posts hinted at new ventures, new successes, while I was left in the shadows. It felt like she was dancing on the grave of my reputation, laughing while I suffered. The sting of public perception was almost unbearable. I felt like a spectacle, the subject of hushed conversations and pitying glances. Some people avoided my gaze, others offered saccharine condolences that felt more like judgment. My good name, something I had guarded fiercely my entire life, was being dragged through the mud by my own flesh and blood. It was a profound humiliation. My routine, once a source of comfort, became a series of small, painful reminders of my isolation. I stopped going to the library book club, no longer felt welcome at the community garden. The world I had carefully built, filled with familiar faces and shared laughter, was shrinking around me, leaving me increasingly alone in my once bustling home. My home, once a sanctuary filled with warmth and memories, now felt cold and empty. Every corner seemed to echo with the silence of my shattered trust, the ghosts of happier times. It was hard to walk through rooms where Frank and I had raised Sarah, knowing what she had become. The walls, once a comfort, now seemed to press in on me, suffocating me. I wrestled with my feelings, a constant battle between despair and a slow-burning rage. There were days I just wanted to give up, to let Sarah win, to fade away. But then the memory of her calculating eyes, her cold manipulation, would ignite a spark deep within me. This wasn't just about money, it was about dignity, about everything I believed in. A burning desire for justice began to grow, an unshakable need to set things right. Not just for myself, but for every elderly person who had been taken advantage of, whose trust had been betrayed. I thought of my parents, of Frank, and the values they instilled in me. I couldn't let Sarah get away with this. I couldn't let her define my legacy with her greed. The humiliating realization that my daughter viewed me as a mere obstacle to her wealth, not a loving mother, was a bitter pill to swallow. It stripped away any lingering illusions I had about her. She wasn't just misguided, she was ruthless. This wasn't an act of desperation. It was a calculated assault on my very existence. The truth, though painful, was also clarifying. That realization was the turning point. The despair, the shame, the isolation, they didn't break me. Instead, they forged a new kind of strength, a cold, determined resolve that settled deep in my bones. I wasn't just Eleanor, the grieving mother. I was Eleanor, the survivor. And I wasn't going to let this stand. I would fight back, not with anger, but with strategy. A quiet, steely determination began to course through my veins. Sarah might have thought she'd won, might have believed she had me cornered and helpless. But she had underestimated me, underestimated the resolve of a mother pushed too far. The pain was still there, but now it was a fuel, a constant reminder of what I needed to do. My mind, sharp as ever, started to churn. I wasn't sure how, or when, but I knew one thing for certain. I would reclaim my dignity, and I would teach Sarah a lesson she would never, ever forget. This wasn't just about my money anymore. It was about justice. The game, as they say, had just begun, and I was ready to play. Sarah had woken up something fierce inside me, and she would soon regret it. Sarah really thought she had me figured out, didn't she? An old woman, a bit confused, easy to manipulate. She saw my age as a weakness, a clear sign my mind was fading, but she couldn't have been more wrong. What she called senility was just me being quiet, observing. My mind, honed by decades as a bookkeeper, was still as sharp as a tack. I'd spent a lifetime noticing every little detail, every number, every person's true colors. That careful eye, that knack for facts, was about to become my secret weapon. You see, I had a habit, an old bookkeeper's compulsion, really. I kept meticulous records, not just of my own money, but, almost without realizing it, of Sarah's too. Little things, you know, her financial struggles, those times she borrowed money, and conveniently forgot, to pay me back. The questionable business dealings that never quite added up. I never consciously built it to use against her, but it was all there, tucked away, a quiet history of her less than honest moments, waiting for a purpose. This wasn't some dramatic spy file, it was just plain facts. Old bank statements, emails I'd saved, even receipts that showed patterns of impulsive spending, and a tendency to cut corners. It was a clear picture of her manipulative ways, her willingness to bend the truth for a quick gain. It was a mother's silent observation of her child's flaws, a collection of moments that, when put together, painted a very clear, damning portrait of Sarah's true character and her insatiable greed. I knew Sarah better than anyone on this earth, even better than she knew herself. I understood her ambitions, how easily she was tempted by money, and her deep-seated belief that she deserved everything. Her greed, which had always simmered beneath the surface, had now erupted into a full-blown inferno. This intimate knowledge of her personality, combined with my detailed records, meant I could anticipate her every move, her next attempt to take what wasn't hers. She thought she had me fooled, but I had always seen right through her. Then there was Mark, that kind young man at the bank. He wasn't just a friendly face. He was a lifeline, a stroke of pure luck. His quick thinking that day, when he read my note and stopped Sarah, wasn't just him doing his job. It was a genuine act of human compassion. He saw, beyond my age, beyond the facade Sarah was trying to create, and recognized the injustice. His willingness to step in, to believe me when I felt completely alone, was the first real crack in the wall of isolation Sarah had built around me. Mark became more than just a sympathetic ear. He transformed into an unexpected ally, a crucial part of my strategy. He offered quiet, practical guidance, explaining complicated legal terms in a way I could understand, and connecting me with resources I never would have found on my own. He put me in touch with organizations that helped victims of elder abuse and shared valuable insights into financial laws. His unwavering support was invaluable, giving me the practical framework I needed to start turning my raw anger and hurt into a carefully constructed plan. Sarah, in her boundless arrogance, had completely underestimated me. She saw my quietness, my moments of reflection, as clear proof of my declining mental state. She loved spreading those nasty rumors about my senility, believing it would make her path to my money even smoother. But what she perceived as weakness, I was now deliberately cultivating as my greatest asset. My feigned frailty became a perfect disguise, allowing me to move unseen, to plan my retaliation right under her unsuspecting nose. The deep sorrow and utter devastation I felt after that day at the bank slowly, almost imperceptibly, began to change. It morphed into a cold, hard resolve, a steely determination I hadn't known I possessed. I started to grasp that my supposed vulnerability was actually my greatest advantage. Sarah saw an old, easily dismissed woman, but I was quietly transforming into something else entirely. A strategist, meticulously planning my next move with the precision of a master chess player, using every tool I'd quietly gathered over a lifetime. The humiliation, the crushing isolation, the profound betrayal, these didn't break me. Instead, they forged a new kind of strength, sharpening my focus with an intensity I hadn't felt in years. The fire in my gut wasn't just anger anymore. It was a clear, burning purpose. I wasn't simply fighting to reclaim my money. I was fighting for my dignity, for the truth, and for every vulnerable elderly person who had been wronged. This wasn't just a personal vendetta. It was a mission, and I now possessed the means to see it through to the end. Sarah might have thought she had me trapped, helpless, and completely out of options. She might have truly believed her vicious smear campaign had secured her victory, but she was about to learn a very painful lesson. You simply do not mess with a mother's legacy, especially when that mother has spent a lifetime honing her skills in meticulous record-keeping and observing every single human detail. The game wasn't over. It was just beginning, and I, Eleanor Vance, was more than ready to play it to its bitter, satisfying conclusion. The day of the public forum arrived, and I walked in, still playing the part. Sarah was there, looking smug, already charming a few people, probably still spreading her lies about my condition. The room was packed with townspeople, some curious, some sympathetic, all ready to hear about elder care. But as I stepped up to the microphone, something shifted inside me. The feigned confusion, the slight tremor in my voice. It all vanished. This wasn't just a meeting. It was my stage. And I was about to deliver a performance Sarah would never forget. My heart beat steady, not with fear, but with a quiet, burning resolve. The audience leaned forward, unaware of the storm I was about to unleash upon my unsuspecting daughter. "Good evening," I began, my voice clear and strong, surprising many, especially Sarah, whose confident smile faltered. I didn't shout or accuse. Instead, I calmly presented the evidence, one piece at a time. Meticulously organized bank statements, recordings of Sarah's manipulative phone calls, sworn affidavits from people she'd defrauded in the past. Then, Mark, the brave bank teller, stepped forward, his testimony confirming Sarah's attempted coercion that fateful day. The murmurs grew into gasps as Sarah's carefully constructed image began to crack, then shatter. Her face, usually so composed, twisted into a mask of shock and disbelief, then pure, unadulterated fury as her lies unraveled before everyone's eyes. The room erupted. Sarah tried to deny it, to scream about my senility one last time, but the evidence was overwhelming, undeniable. The authorities, who had been discreetly present, stepped in immediately. She was arrested right there, in front of everyone she had tried to impress, everyone she had lied to. The humiliation was complete, public, and absolute. Her social standing, something she valued above all else, evaporated in an instant. Watching her led away, I felt a deep, quiet sense of justice settle over me. Not triumph, not glee, but a profound peace that the truth had finally prevailed. She had lost everything she fought so hard to unjustly gain. With the legal proceedings following swiftly, Sarah faced criminal charges for attempted fraud and elder abuse, eventually losing any future claim to my estate. My assets, once almost stolen, were now fully mine to command. I decided then and there that my legacy wouldn't be defined by her greed, but by my resilience. I established the Vance Elder Protection Fund, using a significant portion of my savings to help other vulnerable seniors avoid the same fate. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about ensuring that what happened to me wouldn't happen to others. My purpose, once shattered, was now renewed and stronger than ever. A few weeks later, I went to see Sarah in the holding cell. The bars separated us, a stark symbol of her choices. She looked haggard, defeated, a shadow of the ambitious woman who had tried to take everything from me. There was no anger in my heart, just a quiet, profound sadness for what she had become. I looked her directly in the eye, my voice steady, devoid of emotion. "You thought you were signing away my future, Sarah," I told her, the words carrying the weight of our shared, broken history. "But all you did was sign away your own." With that, I turned and walked away, leaving her to face the consequences of her actions alone.